So first and foremost, if they can't develop a pitcher who leads a rotation, that's only the beginning of their problems. That even if they are able to develop that person, let's look at the short list of who that could be. And really, we would say maybe they would reveal a rotation leading pitcher, the next ace. Well, on that short list are guys with expiring contracts. So it's not like they're going to be cheap. I mean, say Jordan Montgomery becomes the guy who leads the rotation this year, expiring contract. Say Jack Flaherty is 2019 Jack Flaherty, and as good as his talent would allow him to be, and his health has held him back from being. Well, he's a free agent at the end of this year. Miles Miklasz, say he's the guy, and there are some peripherals there from this past year that suggest, man, he could get better this coming year. Just in building on what he did, right? Say he's that guy. Hey, you know what he's got? An expiring contract. So even if they're able to develop or reveal or channel that ace, that guy who's going to lead the rotation for 2024, the short list is mostly free agents, all of whom are going to be costly. Miklasz is the most likely of that group to jump on an extension this spring just because of, he's had a blast being a Cardinal. I think it's very clear. Two-time All-Star, comes back, gets a chance to have spring training in his backyard. He enjoys being with the Cardinals, part of the Cardinals, and they like having him around. There's an obvious match there. The other part that you asked about is, are they being defiant? I don't think so. I think they're positioning themselves for a change. I think we are seeing publicly, if not in their comments, but certainly in their actions, a shift that shows that ownership is being lobbied to adjust and to adapt. It's not happened quickly. I don't think that's because they're defiant. I think that's because they've continued to have success. But I think there are folks that are paid to see the future. They're paid handsomely to see the future and build toward it with the Cardinals, who are saying, look, the game is changing. And while they drafted and developed so well, the game caught up with them. And while they were at the bleeding edge of some of the analytics, the game caught up with them. And while they have maintained a year-to-year ability to contend, the teams that have tanked and slingshot past them did so by pulling the plug and going down to the bottom of the standings. And the Cardinals don't feel that they can do that with the brand. And now you have teams that are just radically outspending them. And their model, as Mozeliak told Ben Frederickson at the winter meetings, their model is being tested. Well, I think you can change the verb a little bit. The model, it has been tested, and it's not passing. The other teams are passing them, and they're doing it with spending. The Atlanta team has taken the Cardinals model and scaled it up greatly. The Mets are just clobbering people with a pocketbook. The Padres, a team that is in a market the same size as Pittsburgh, is spending to keep up with the Dodgers and the Giants, who, the Giants are going to have one of the most atrocious off seasons ever for a big spender. And that still speaks to what they're trying to do. The Cardinals have to adapt, and I think what we're seeing is the opening stages of the argument that ownership needs to do that.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. It's really intriguing because, for them to keep pace, and we're talking about not the NL Central, we're talking about the bigger view because it's now a bigger view, and you have to win. You have to be better than the best teams in the league to have a realistic chance, or a more realistic chance, because there's no guarantees, more realistic chance of advancing in the postseason. And they've obviously fallen behind in that that endeavor. But they're going to have to be for this model to work. I mean, the Cardinals are going to have to be almost perfect. Like, they're going to have to hit the jackpot on every draft. They're going to have to find a Jordan Walker all the time. They're going to have to find a number one starter consistently. I mean, it's a lot to ask, and I'm being really general in what I'm saying. Or you know, I think part of it is that they got Goldschmidt and Arenado so easily in terms of let's call it the level of pain normally is associated with acquiring a superstar player, you know, one of the best, in their case, two best players in baseball. Usually it's something that is so gut-wrenching and so risky and so scary in a way that it's really hard to do, yet they were able to do it, and it's pretty much pain-free. But to their credit, they did it. They found the right kind of partners to make that happen. But how realistic is they're going to be able to make trades like that again? And I do know they have prospect capital, so you know that needs to be acknowledged. That makes it possible, but they're just on the margins are really, really slim now. You know, they don't have much wiggle room for failure in terms of their philosophy of building from within.
I just don't see how they do that and contend in the National League. I just don't. I'm willing to see it evolve and see how it goes, but I just, you know, they have the comfort of the NL Central. We don't really know a whole lot about how the new playoff format is going to work, and you got the added kind of wrinkle of the coming year with the schedule. But the Cardinals still are going to have a majority of their games against the NL Central, and they can draw comfort from that. But I don't know how much that matters when you need to compete for one of the top two spots, and you know you're down there in terms of, you know, you're not in the top five for spending, and these other teams. I mean, look, the Phillies won the pennant this past year, and they got Trey Turner, and while they're not going to have Bryce Harper for part of the year, they'll probably still have him and have him better than he was this past year. So, you know, I don't know what direction the Giants are going to go. They might not be the team they hoped they would be. The Dodgers seem to be taking a step back, but then you have the Padres and the Mets certainly taking strides forward. And Atlanta is just, you know, they bet big on their ability to identify talent, sometimes within Oakland system, evidently, and then keep it. And that they have a lot of long-term deals in place. So, you know, I think, you know, that better work out for them if they're going to contend, but there's every reason to believe that it will. And the Cardinals are just at a spot where they don't have a roster like Atlanta that is locked in long-term. And the areas where they have question marks and uncertainty in the coming years also increasingly are the most expensive, and you could argue the most volatile. It's just a very odd spot to be in, and I think even if everything breaks right for them, I'm not sure they're of the level of those other contenders. I don't know. You know, I mean, because everything broke right for them this past year except for the pitch. I mean, they had two guys finish top three in the MVP, and they had Albert Pujols have a second half for the ages, not just for his age. And where did that get them?
No, it's an excellent point. So it's going to be interesting. And I guess the final thing for you, my friend, is that this is just like such a standard obligatory question, so I got to ask it. But
sure,
do you see them doing anything? And I'm not talking about on a major scale, obviously. Do you see them doing much between now and, I don't know, halfway through spring training or so? Other than maybe a tweak here or a tweak there, and I don't know what those tweaks would be because they seem pretty committed to what they have, you know, and you know, with their outfield and you name it. I don't have to go through everything, but if they're going to do anything, what's your best estimate of like where they could go?
I mean, they still would like to add a pitcher of some type, and you know, some of the guys who have gone off the board, I think it's Rucinski, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who, came back to the States, signed with Oakland. That was a guy who they had at least explored and had some conversation with. His signing with Oakland is telling, right? Because he was obviously going to get an opportunity to start there. That's not something that the Cardinals are promising or feel they can promise guys. And there's a good chance that the A's offered him more money than than the Cardinals were willing to go to, which tells you a little bit about where the Cardinals are in how they're bidding, which is still behind the market. So those two things line up to making a choice closer to spring training as folks are scrambling for roster spots, not when they're looking for the best job. And so, they'll still kind of look for that move. I think they still have something there that they can do. You're right. I don't know how big some of those guys that you thought maybe would be there looking for roster spots and not specific jobs are already off the board. The Corey Dickersons are still there, but the J.D. Martinez's are gone, kind of thing. I do know, the exploration, they've looked into some of the trades that could be had. My feel was, and this could be, this is just on the periphery, but my sense was that they did impart some of that to look for how things would move in June and July and what starters might be there at that time that they can make a play for, that have control for the years and for a few years beyond this coming one, and that they would look for the guy who could help them now and then be part of the answer moving forward. That does fit their model more, especially when they see the prices rising, making a play for a guy who they have more years of control with, but they also don't have to sell him on the opportunity. The trade is, sends him towards the Cardinals. So I think there's a lot that they can learn from this offseason. The rising cost of pitching is the biggest one. They can also learn maybe that list of guys who will be available. Lopez has kicked around a little bit. He's been on the move, not on the move, been on the move, but not on the move. There's an appeal for him from his side of coming to the Cardinals. But, the Cardinals have had their chance to play for him. I think the Murphy deal, Bernie, to kind of bring it around, is something and you mentioned this, like the price of prospects didn't pinch when it came to Arenado and Goldschmidt. The asking price from the Cardinals for some of the trades that they've looked into would pinch. And I think teams are aware that they don't want to be the next one that the Cardinals capitalize on. And I say that not entirely facetiously, because there is from the outside looking in going into this winter, it sure looked like Sean Murphy set up well for the Cardinals to make that deal, right? Mm-hmm. Because Oakland was not in a position, I felt, and in talking to other people, to kind of inform that feeling, and talking to baseball officials on the outside, some of whom had looked into what it would cost. They just felt that Oakland's situation was one that made sense to move him, and that they didn't have the leverage to command a huge package of players in return. Clearly, they asked for one from the Cardinals. They asked for a substantial package from the Cardinals. And whether they eventually got it or not, I would suggest that they probably got closer to the perception at the beginning that I was talking about, that they weren't in a spot to get a whole lot of leverage, but they thought they could with the Cardinals. And I think that's really telling, that the cost of the Cardinals doing business is just going up.
That's really interesting. Good stuff as always. And don't work too hard, man. Extend your vacation. You've earned it many times over.
Yeah, that was the plan. And then Southwest Airlines had other thoughts about it.
Oh, no.
But we're in a far better spot than so many folks out there. Goodness. So seeing the airport the other day, and just all the folks stuck there and trying to get home or trying to get to family. So we found out, in time to stay here in St. Louis for a little bit longer, which was nice. But gosh, what a mess that is for folks. And I'm thinking, my son was asking me about it. He's like, "You're like preoccupied with this. Get over it. They canceled our flight." I'm like, "Yeah, kind of thinking about the hockey writers, like the guys who have to.
No, that's right. It's a good point.
They like, how would I have handled? I go, that's on my mind. Like, how would you do this? You got to do your job. You got to get to a place. You hop in a rental car. Do you have time? How do you pull it off? And so it's just tough. So hopefully it gets sorted out. But yeah, it's an extended stay in St. Louis then.
Well, that's okay, man. So and I know you'll be out and about after a while, but welcome back home, and I'm glad you had a chance to have such an enjoyable family trip to London. And Ian, I saw the photo of Ian on Instagram, and it's just ridiculous. It's just. Yeah. I mean, I know that he's older now. I mean, I know all that, but to actually see the photo, I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah.
The little guy used to be running around in my house even a couple times. So. That's great.
Yeah.
It's great. I know you guys are really proud of him, too, as you should be. So we'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
Next week, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I hope you have a happy holidays there, and Happy New Year, Bernie.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. Happy New Year to you, your family, your colleagues at the Post-Dispatch STL today. And
we got a new one announced today, which is exciting.
Yeah, I heard about it. Is that Lynn Worthy?
Yeah, Lynn Worthy, the Royals beat writer, is coming over to join the Cardinal beat.
Help out with that baseball coverage. That'll be good, man. He's a pro. He's been around a while, and I like him. That's a good move, real good move.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're all excited.
That's excellent. Looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table. I know the new hockey writer is either just about on board, but I know that he's basically getting ready to start. That's what Jim Thomas told me. So you guys, change can be good, right?
Yeah,
it can be good.
absolutely.
So you guys, it's good to see you add and bring in some people that'll have to fill big shoes, but they can do it. So thank you very much, man.
Yeah.
Take care.
No problem. Happy New Year to all your listeners too.
All right, that's Derrick Goold here on the Bernie Show, 590 The Fan, KFNS. Yeah, no need to draw this out because we can come back and revisit it. But, yeah, the Cardinals are going to have to change their model. They're just going to have to expand their horizons, and unfortunately it'll be costly to expand their horizons, unfortunately for them. And, Jim Hewer, I'll leave it at this, and then we can take a break. The interesting thing about this is that, yes, there is no doubt that the Cardinals need to spend more money. There's just no doubt about it. This isn't whining. This isn't just wanting to spend just to spend to make me and others happy. I've never been into that because their model has worked very, very well for so long, but their model's now becoming outdated, and it's a little bit marginal now. They can make the playoffs because of a terrible division, but they can't do anything once they get there because they just don't have the firepower. Not with their pitching staff especially, but also – even though their offense was really good last season, and sorry, but I don't pretend that it wasn't just because their key guys came up short in what turned out to be a 2-game series in the playoffs. The Cardinals had a really good offense last season. Their position players were number 1 in the National League in wins above replacement. There's a lot of talent in the house. Even with some of the disruptions with injuries last year, they still had the best set of position players in the league. But they're still lacking firepower top to bottom. They need a little more firepower or more reliability on that offense. They absolutely need more strikeout power in their pitching staff. And anybody who's watched the Houston Astros, you can hate the Astros. You can hate them with all your being because of the trash can stuff and all that. But let's just talk about baseball on practical terms. That team's winning 100 games. That team is a serious threat every single year to get to the World Series and win it. And they're doing it primarily with marching one guy after another out there that can just blow hitters away. And the Cardinals have these sinker ballers. That's great. But there are times where you just need to overwhelm people with heat. You need more strikeouts. They don't have it. They're lacking it in starters and lacking it in relievers, except a couple of isolated examples. So they're going to have to do something. But the point I wanted to make, and it's obviously tied into this, the Cardinals aren't real good about spending money. I know that it's worked out really well with Goldie, and I know it's worked out well with Arenado, but it helps when the idiots who traded him to you are defraying some of the, pretty good percentage of the cost. And what Goldie signed for was not a break-the-bank type of contract, and he's certainly been worth every penny. So I'm not going to say they failed every time, but boy, this front office has got a kind of a frightening track record when it comes to spending money. You talk about swings and misses. You talk about investing money in the wrong people. That makes me nervous. They do not have a good track record. Maybe the track record's better now when you add Arenado and Goldie into it. But everybody says, including me, well, they got to spend more money. They got to invest more money. They got to expand their payroll. They got to do that. In theory, that's absolutely correct. But, it almost makes me run out in the streets. No, the idea of them just making some disastrous decisions. And maybe when we return, we'll talk about this. But I'm going to explain why. I'm good right now. I'm good. I've been good right now with what they have because there hasn't been much out there that appeals to me. And I see a lot of people, online and everything else. I'm not talking about writers. I'm talking about fans, and fans mean well. The online forums and other places. I'm not knocking anybody. But just they see a name and they're, oh, well, the Cardinals should have done this. The Cardinals should have done that. No, I don't. I'm tired of the half-measure steps, I don't need any half-measure stuff. And I don't need pitchers that they already have to duplicate what they already have, like injury-prone, vulnerable starters. Why would you want more of that?